everybody, welcome to the Feather River Fish Hatchery. My name is Gabby Parmentier and I'm a tour guide here at the hatchery and at the Lake Oroville Visitor Center for California Department of Water Resources. DWR helps manage California's water to ensure that there is water for everyone, and that includes Chinook salmon. Today we're going to take a virtual tour with our guide Jana Frazier and learn some really cool and interesting facts about Chinook salmon.
This is where we begin the tour of the Feather River Fish Hatchery. The first thing I want to do is explain to you where the salmon spawn when they're in the wild, which is in the Feather River. So the fish come in up the Sacramento River, they hook right into the Feather River, and once they get here, they're going to spawn. They're going to pair up, they're going to lay their eggs in what we call a red, in a sandy and gravelly nest. Eventually the little eggs are going to hatch out into what we call sac-fry or alevin. And then eventually, when those fish button up and they can swim, they're going to start making their way out to the ocean. For the next 3 to 4 years, those fish are going to figure out how to survive, not get eaten, not get caught. And then something is going to trigger those fish to come back into the Feather River to start that cycle around and around and around. Now these fish are going to die once they enter the river system, whether they spawn or not. When they go into the hatchery, they're going to come in just like they would do. The fish are going to swim up the fish ladder, but at the hatchery processing room, we're going to put the fish to sleep. We're very humanely going to kill the fish to remove the eggs and the milk. Those eggs, fertilized, are going to go into incubator trays in the incubator room. Once they button up or zip up, those fish need to be fed, and at that point we move them out into the raceway or the rearing channel. When they're big enough, about 6 months after hatching, those fish are going to be released back out into the river system, and they are going to continue the original cycle all over again. So even though we start them off in the hatchery, these are not farmed fish, these are hatchery fish. Once they're released, they got to figure out how to survive, how to fend for themselves for the next 3 to 4 years. Let's go down to the river and check it out and see how they enter that fish ladder. All right, welcome everybody. You are at the beginning of the Feather River Fish Hatchery. You can see the fish jumping out there at the barrier dam. It looks like a waterfall. We actually built that dam so the fish cannot get over it. They're going to try, because they're hardwired to jump over an obstruction when they're going up the river once they leave the ocean. But we don't want them going any further upstream. There's nowhere for them to go because the tallest dam in the United States, the Oroville Dam, blocks them from going any further upstream. So the purpose of the barrier dam is to turn the fish to the left. They will enter the fish ladder 2/10 of a mile. They're going to swim up to the processing room. We're going to go there later and check that out. But these fish are not made to enter the fish ladder. They will either choose to go left because they feel that water coming down the ladder, which entices them to go upstream, or the fish are going to turn back downstream and they're going to spawn naturally. The majority of the fish are spawning naturally in the river. Again, the male and the female pair up. They build a little nest in the rock, sand, and gravel. It's called a red. That's where the eggs will go. But in the hatchery, we're going to artificially help those fish. We're going to take the eggs and milk from the fish. So this is the beginning for the fish once they enter that ladder. Once they hit the viewing windows, and we'll stop off there before we go further up the ladder, those fish may turn back and go into the Feather River and spawn naturally, or they might decide to continue going up the ladder all the way to the processing room. Either way, these fish are at the end of their life cycle. These fish are in the dying process. Whether they spawn or not, these fish are going to die. But those eggs that they spawn, that they lay, are going to start that life cycle over again. Let's move on up the ladder and head over to the barrier dam windows so you can see those fish up close and personal. All right, so now we're in front of the fish viewing windows, which we had built inside of our fish ladder because we understood the attraction for scientific value and also for students to come here and just the general public to enjoy the fish when they come through. So this is a good area for the fish to rest. So you're going to see this fish here is a female. You'll also notice she's missing a little piece of her nose, of her snout. The female's mouth and head is more rounded. You can tell the male not by the size, not by the color, but by the hooked jaw. The female mouth stays more rounded She's more kissable. The male fish is going to get a hook jaw, which we call a kype. So that hook jaw actually begins to grow during the spawning season. They actually use those kypes and those teeth for fighting off other males when they are establishing the nesting rights in the river system. So these fish, on the average, this is a very big male, and again you can see the pronounced kype and the teeth. Some of these fish have white blotches on them. That is a fungus that will begin to grow once they enter the river system because they're not eating anymore. These fish have a very low immune system, so any little injury is going to cause an infection to grow, a fungal infection to grow, and they get that white fuzzy zombie looking stuff. So occasionally you'll see little eggs drift by. This is not the correct habitat for those eggs. They're dead eggs. You'll also notice, even though these fish have not been eating for months, they are not attempting to eat any of these eggs. They're living off their fat stores. So we're going to watch the fish swimming around here for a minute, and then we're going to head up and see where these fish are going up toward the processing room. So we are here right now in front of the Feather River Fish Hatchery processing room. But before we move over to where I show you what happens with the fish once they enter the room, we also tag our spring Chinook salmon. The spring Chinook will enter the river in the springtime. They're not here to spawn though. They were here to go up many, many miles up the Feather River. But because the Oroville Dam is the tallest dam in the United States, fish cannot get over that barrier. So we built the hatchery. When the fish come in, the ladder, which you already saw, how we got them in this way, how we encourage them to come up, these little things that look like ice picks, we put a green tag on them, and then we literally poke it into the back of the fish by the dorsal fin. They get two, it's rough out there. These fish come back in the fall to spawn. Sometimes they only have one tag. But if you catch this fish, there's literally a number on here. We want you to call and tell us where you caught the fish. But once we get this fish tagged, we release it underneath the little chute, looks like a sewer manhole cover underneath the table, and it'll go back out to the river and wake up and continue on its way. These fish are going to live out in the Feather River for a couple of months without eating. Once they enter fresh water, these fish are no longer eating. They are starving to death. They are surviving on their fat stores. These fish will not begin to spawn until the spawning signal kicks in sometime around September. When the fish are ready to spawn, this spring green tag will tell us it's a spring fish. We want to spawn this fish with another green tag fish. Spring to spring, the fall has no tag. We want to spawn a no tag to a no tag. That way we're not hybridizing the fish. Let's step over to the windows and see how they get those eggs out. Welcome everybody to the next stop on the virtual tour of the Feather River Fish Hatchery. So you saw where they came in up the river, hit the barrier dam, came up the ladder. Now we're going to see where the fish end up. When they enter the ladder, they will end up here in our processing room. So this bin has got a couple of names to it. It's called the lift bin. It's also called the tranquilizing tank or the trank tank. You can see the CO2 cartridges, which is the carbon dioxide, which is those silver cartridges at the end of the lift bin. They pump the gas into the water. It literally puts the fish to sleep. That way the technicians can safely handle those fish. Then the fish are sorted. The female will go on the short table. The male will go on the long table. We are constantly spraying water on them to make sure that the blood does not get on the eggs. If the blood gets on the eggs, it'll seal them off. We will not be able to fertilize the fish. The noise you're hearing is the special knife that goes through the back of the head, which kills the fish very humanely. The fish will be sorted. If we're not going to use their eggs and milk, they'll go into the tub. We're going to process those for people food later. The fish on the tables, we're going to take the eggs from the female, the milk from the male. It's going to be swirled together in the little red bucket, and then it's going to go back into the incubator room. So from here, this is the end of the fish's life cycle. These fish enter the river system from the ocean. Whether they spawn or not, these fish are going to die. Think of the Lion King. Even though the fish are in the dying process, they are laying their eggs in what we call the red in the river, which we talked about already. And then when those eggs grow up and hatch, they make their way downstream and out into the ocean. The next 3 or 4 years, they got to figure out how not to get eaten, and then they got to figure out how to come back into the Feather River. So here we take the eggs and milk, we wash the fish, make sure there's no blood on them. This wraps it up for this stop. We're going to head out to the incubator room and then eventually out to the raceway to see where these eggs go, and once the eggs hatch, where the little fry go. So here we are at the incubator room. You've seen how the fish leave the river, enter the ladder, make their way up to the processing room. You've seen how we remove the eggs and the milk from the fish. Now we're going to see where those eggs go. They go into the incubator room. These trays are where all of those eggs are going to go. This hatchery was constructed so it could handle up to 20 million salmon eggs. We don't always get to keep that many, but we can handle that many if we are. These white pipes up on top is how we put the raw, untreated Feather River water on these eggs. So if you drink this water, it'd make you sick. But the fish need that raw water, untreated, so they know where to go when they come back from the ocean into our river to spawn. Once the eggs are in this tray, they will eventually get little tiny black dots. That's called the eyed up stage. But you'll notice this one egg is white. So I want you to think about it for a minute. Why would that egg begin to turn white? Turn around, tell your teacher, hold your hand up, write it down, in case you got it wrong. This egg is dead or it's dying. So this egg is going to have to be picked out. We're going to take a syringe and we're literally going to suck that one white egg out. If we don't, this dead or dying egg is going to make all the eggs around it dead. It's going to make every egg in this tray dead, and every tray underneath it, those eggs will die. So we have to check the eggs like she's doing in this photo. Look for these white eggs, we need to pull them out. Right now we're behind the Feather River Fish Hatchery processing room. This is another part of the science that we do here at the hatchery. It's not just about taking the eggs and the milk. We also have a lot of science involved. So you'll notice that we're taking some of the fish, we're measuring their length. The length will give us an idea of how old the fish is. The bigger the fish, the older the fish. The other thing that we do is we're going to take a scale sample. The scales, when we look at them underneath a microscope, have rings on them like the rings of a tree. We can actually count those rings and get an idea again of how old that fish is. We're going to match that to the otolith bone or the ear bone that's in the fish. You'll notice that they're taking the heads off the fish. They will later take the otolith bone or that ear bone out of the fish in the laboratory, and they're going to look at it under a microscope. It's going to look like a very small, beautifully designed scallop shell, but they're going to read the little lines or the circles on that otolith bone, and they're going to know exactly how old the fish is. The other thing that we do is inside of the snout of that fish is a tiny little chip, and engraved on that tiny little tag is the year, the number for the hatchery, and the numbers of fish that were tagged. We're going to take the heads off the fish. We're going to look for it at the laboratory. We're going to know exactly how old the fish is and exactly what hatchery that fish came from. So that's part of the science behind everything that we do here at the hatchery. It's not just about taking the eggs and fish, it's about learning about their entire life cycle.
All right guys, to wrap up our virtual tour, we are out here at the rearing channels. These are also known as flow-through systems. This is where the baby Chinook salmon will be brought when they are fry size and their sacks have disappeared, and they've called what we describe as button up. So they'll be brought out here and live out here in these rearing channels for approximately the next 6 months of their life before they're released back into the Feather River system or further downstream. To the left over here, you'll see a bunch of fish in this rearing channel. These are not Chinook salmon, these are steelhead trout. But like Chinook salmon, they are an anadromous fish, meaning that they will migrate to the ocean and then come back to the Feather River to spawn. Unlike Chinook salmon though, steelhead trout do not die after spawning, so they'll migrate back and forth from the ocean to the river system throughout their lifetime, and they can live to be around 10 to 11 years old. How many fish do you think are in this rearing channel right now? Anybody have any guesses out there? There are 450,000 fish in this channel right now. And these guys will stay here for the next few months until they're released back into the river system. So before we leave today, I want you guys to take a look up above me. What do you see up there? Looks like netting that's covering all these raceways here, right? What do you think that is for? If you guys know, raise your hand and tell your teacher. It's to keep predators out. So what type of predators are we keeping out? Most likely birds. If the birds were able to get through here, they would eat up all the baby fish in these raceways and we'd be left with nothing to put back into the river system. So we have to keep netting above the raceways to keep the predators out. Thanks everybody for joining us on our virtual tours of the Feather River Fish Hatchery. I hope you learned a lot from this lesson today, and take care and have a good year.